Welcome to I Know What You Watched Last Week, number 3. So what did we watch last week?
Yeah, so we watched, I was about to say Talk to the Hand now, because that's what you keep saying. We watched Talk to Me, and by the way, I have to let everyone know out there that when John from behind the camera tried to remind me it was Talk to Me, he did this, Talk to the Hand, but that wasn't even the movie that we'd actually watched that week. So I correctly guessed it somehow, Freddy vs. Jason. So from now on, this actually is Freddy vs. Jason. Because Freddy with the glove, I get. I was a bit confused as to how this was Jason.
Well, you're the one who came to the conclusion that it was Freddy vs. Jason, so...
Not so much with the help of your hand gestures, but it was hilarious.
But now that's the official symbol for Freddy vs. Jason.
You saw it here first.
Not Talk to the Hand.
Not Talk to the Hand, which is actually Talk to Me.
Talk to Me. Talk to the Hound. Talk to the Hand.
Talk to the Hand?
Talk to the Hand sounds like a Wine Brothers spoof.
Yeah, probably be pretty sick, actually. They could do a much better one than the original. But anyway, before we get into that, the second film we watched was Amityville Dollhouse.
Amityville 8.
8, yeah.
We skipped number 7 because on episode 1 of I Know What You Watched Last week, we discussed Amityville It's About Time, which is number 6.
So why did we skip 7?
Because Dollhouse looked more interesting. By the time you're 8 movies in, I don't think you really need to follow it in chronological order.
Well, considering the first Amityville I ever saw was the 7th or 6th, did you say?
6th. It's About Time.
Yeah.
And you're very lucky because...
it's your favourite.
Like I said, I didn't really enjoy too much the original 2. They're very different. They get very silly towards the end. And
Yeah.
So I've never bothered to watch any more Amityville apart from the remake, which happened in 2005 or something like that, until It's About Time. So now I'm slowly but surely being all turned around on the Amityville series.
Yep. And before I give my opinion on that one, the third one that we saw was Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which I can't believe I haven't seen yet, considering I feel like I've seen loads of iterations of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I haven't seen that one.
I've always come to you and said, right, you've got to see this movie or that movie, so forth, and we obviously checked out original Chainsaw Massacre ages ago. I'd obviously seen it way previously, and since then you'd seen the more modern, reboots, let's call it something like that, Texas Chainsaw 3D, where he's in the basement of the house. And I'd always left Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 because, well, it was pretty bizarro.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into that one.
So, in order, as per usual, favourite to least favourite. It's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
Great
it is
choices.
Hard. Great choices. Don't know if I agree on that, but I guess...
A couple of great choices, anyway.
Yeah, I guess... I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 first.
Agreed.
And then Amityville.
Agreed.
And then sadly, Talk to Me.
Hand.
Yeah, I was so excited for that film. But it was a letdown. So yeah, third.
Just like all more modern, hyped horror movies, it just wasn't for us.
I want them to be good so badly.
I want everything to be good, yeah. What I understand is how they get so hyped to the point where maybe that's detrimental to the movie itself.
Yeah, hype I think can definitely harm something, but then also it is literally just a point of people have such different taste, and I keep seeing across social media people who are obsessed with found footage, whereas found footage to me, there's a few exceptions which are brilliant, but apart from that I find it such a painful thing to watch.
Found footage is like the exorcism subgenre, in that really there's only one good exorcism movie, one top quality exorcism movie, and then there are a few good ones, and the rest of it might as well not have happened.
Yeah, again.
Same with found footage.
Yeah.
Leave it with Blair Witch 1, I think, and after that everything can go.
But like I said, some people love it, and if they love it, then that's that's for them. But
so
yeah.
Talk to Me is more like a meta type horror, as everything is these days.
I could see where they were going with it, but are we starting in this order? Don't we normally start with a favourite?
No, I'm
Just
going
winging
this
it.
way because I haven't got too much to say about the movie.
Okay.
Because, there's just not too much to say about it, I don't think.
Mm.
I'd say, what I would like to say is I like the idea, the premise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounded sick before we watched it.
It just could have been made really creepy and dark, and it wasn't. It was light-hearted and fun, throwaway jokes, and no good.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of an issue for me with tone and pacing.
Yeah,
because
it's a horror movie for children again. This is a tweens movie.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The concept was really good, and I know you might disagree, but I actually thought the lead actress was really interesting to look at, so I liked that casting.
I get the cast.
Great big eyes and stuff. But
the character sucked.
Yeah, all the characters sucked in that though. They all did. But what I think they were doing, they're clearly going for that more party vibe and trying to make it a bit like, whoa, look how sick this is, and we're getting all carried away with it. But it didn't seem believable. I don't see how that's going to happen. And then obviously when the little boy that's where all the actual gore comes into it. But again, there was no like proper build up of it. It's just, it takes away any of the impact of the gore that they do show, in my opinion.
So there's going to be Talk to Me, as in that's the title,
yeah,
as a sequel, and hopefully they go somewhere different with it.
I doubt it. I mean, the first one was a success, clearly, as far as they're concerned. So,
what do we think about the budget? 4 million, and I'm wondering where that went.
Yeah, and also they keep saying like, oh, it's such a low budget indie thing, and I'm like, but 4 million, that's decent. We could make a few movies for that money.
Both heathens.
Yeah.
And it's only because the second one's going to cost a bit more.
Yeah.
I keep seeing people said they were, as per usual, every time a horror movie comes out, they were freaked out by this movie, or they were scared out of their wits' end, etc., etc. And I'm just thinking, if people are scared of this movie and some other more modern one, they can smile. There's a whole host of them. Then these people are not going to be ready for what Heathen is going to bring. They're really not.
Yeah.
And that excites me.
Yeah.
Last thing I mentioned about Talk to Me is they did a really good real-life version of Nelson Muntz from The Simpsons. Yeah, that's a straight rip-off of Nelson Muntz. I don't know what he's doing.
I didn't get that character either. I didn't get if they were supposed to be nice or a bitch or... Yeah, I don't know. It was a disappointment. I was so looking forward to it, but there was no build-up of tension.
I'm always suckered in. I always end up watching the new movies, even though in my heart of hearts...
You have to try them and just keep hoping.
I want to support all horror.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting
and also,
back what I want.
Hopefully one day when we watch one, it will actually be great, and then we win. We win because we finally have another good horror movie to watch.
I think at this point it's going to take Heathen to be the first of a new wave of horror cinema. So let's move on to the second favourite.
Yeah, which was Amityville.
Amityville
Dollhouse. There is one overriding thing I'm going to dive straight into this with. No. The new wife of the dude.
Well, I was going to start because I wanted to talk about the characters quite a bit, and it needs a little bit of context rather than just going straight. So we've got...
Alright, so I'll just prepare myself to do lots of typing for subtitles.
I'll try to keep it concise.
Succinct.
So we've got a mixed family coming together, divorced parents, each with kids, and they move in to a new house. Now, the dad has a son, Todd, and I believe the daughter, Jessica, is his as well.
Hello.
And then the mother, Claire, comes in with her son, Jimmy. And then later on, we've got an aunt and uncle who are part of the cult.
Yeah.
Right, so just so I put it out there, you can say your point, so now everything that I come back to will make some kind of sense.
Okay, so there was a theme. Obviously, the evil that's come in via the doll's house and is controlled through the doll's house. It's infecting the family members in different ways, and
it's been gifted to the daughter
Yeah.
as a present. They just found it in the garage. How it ended up in the garage, I don't know. And why it's a replica of the Amityville house, who cares? But it's there.
No, I think they were saying that was the site of where the Amityville house was, and it had burnt down, and so someone had like a miniature copy of their own house.
I did
or
hear him
something.
say that, but it just looks nothing like
And also the
where it
clippings.
used to be, so
Well,
I discarded that.
it's number 8, but but anyway. So yeah, the mum and
Claire.
her husband's son. So not her biological son, but her son in now legally.
The beautiful Star Andreef.
She cannot stop picturing him in a sexual way.
Well, again, let me stop you right here, because again, we're going into this with no context.
As we usually do.
Yeah, but I wanted to make an exception for this one because it was so. I don't know what the word is.
I was going to wait and see what you said for the word.
There isn't really a word for it, because again, before we get into it, when I decided to start taking down some more concise notes when I'm watching these movies.
Right.
And
Research.
before I noticed anything of the movie, I thought back to Amityville, It's About Time.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, right, that had a sex scene. Will this movie have a sex scene? And then as soon as I saw Star Andreef come onto the screen, they're definitely having a sex scene. You can just tell when you saw this beautiful woman. But I wasn't prepared for how far it would go in terms of that content. And it was an innocent thought. Will there be a sex scene? Kind of an unnecessary sex scene, much like it was in It's About Time.
Yeah.
And wow, did I get a payoff. There was multiple. She's like a wonton sex goddess.
Wonton?
Yeah.
Is she from a Chinese restaurant?
Yeah, she's a wonton.
So yeah, it's obviously the evil influence from the doll's house that is making her into this wonton lady. But I just couldn't get over it. My overriding memory, maybe it's just because I'm a pervert, but my overriding memory from the movie is just this young male actor, Todd, did you say the character was called?
Yeah, Todd, young, hunky Todd.
Todd is just Todd's nipples and like sweaty body being focused on, and yeah, it felt dirty.
Yeah, it's a pretty filthy movie.
Yeah,
Really
I mean,
filthy.
that's pretty taboo, wanting your husband's young son. I'm assuming he must be about 15 or 16, because he said his girlfriend was something around that. Or she'd just gotten her license, so 16?
Yeah. So when we first meet this family, and Bill shows up with Claire, his new missus, and then we see Todd, and we see the daughter, and then out of nowhere comes little Jimmy. And at that point, as the stepdad, I didn't realise at that point they were already married, because it kind of looked like the dad was being introduced to Jimmy at that point, because they had a bit of a weird confrontation where Jimmy runs off. But
Right.
I'm just saying, if I was the dad, I was thinking to myself, I do not want that as a stepson, so I would have bailed instantly. But then when I saw his mother, I was like, oh, he stuck around
Fair
and
enough.
did what he had to do, what was necessary. Because before we start seeing the house get possessed, or the inhabitants of the house get possessed, I was thinking to myself, first of all, can we address what has possessed Jimmy's barber to give him that haircut? Because that was a whopper of a haircut that he's got there. And then that's just from the front, and later on when we see him from the back, it's almost like he has long strands of hair coming down the back of his head in a very straight line, and then he's just got, it's just an abomination of a haircut, and I couldn't get past it. And I was also mention that Jimmy also has arachnophobia and a pet mouse, whereas Todd has no shirt and gets lots of action.
Yeah, that Jimmy character was interesting, and I've never actually understood that. Now that you mention it, I was like, fair enough, he's not interested in looking good or this or that, he's too intelligent for anything like that, but surely his mum realises that he's a complete social pariah.
So I've got to go back to the haircut, and
But then wouldn't the mum take over and be like to the barber, oh, do this style, and then wouldn't she dress him in
Jimmy's
something
got
a bit cooler?
arachnophobia, and spiders pop out of it at him now and again. And I was thinking, if I was a spider, I would have whatever phobia it is of hair, just because of seeing him with my 8 eyes, that can't have been pretty for the spiders. Also, he's scared of spiders, but he's not scared of undead zombie dads.
Yeah, it was weird his reaction when the dad first came out, because he was clearly like greenish and gross looking, and he didn't seem in any way perturbed by that.
He's one of the last evil incarnations we see in the house. He appears in the last third, mostly. But what I like is the slow build. So
yeah,
at first the Dollhouse has, it's realised that these people have moved into the house. The house doesn't want them there, so it thinks, what can I do? So on their first night in the house turns up the heat, so that everyone's sweating, and the house is thinking, I'll show these humans, they won't be able to survive in this heat, and they'll leave instantly. Unfortunately for the house, they don't. So what does he do next? Next night he turns on the stove. So the stove comes on after the thermometer goes up, and then later on the house bursts a window open and lets a bunch of leaves fly into the house. So I feel like this was an amateur demonic possession at first, because it tried all of these...
Getting his toes wet,
and then quickly though, it turns Jimmy's pet mouse into a giant mouse hiding under his bed, what appeared to be a giant rubber tail and 2 beady red eyes. So I'm not sure if it was supposed to be a rat, the mouse turned into a rat, or if it stayed as a mouse.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was still...
Rats are considered more evil.
Yeah, I guess. But maybe they're just because they're bigger as well, people are more scared of them, I don't know. But that mouse was adorable. I was sad when it died.
But it comes back to life.
Yeah, it doesn't... Wait.
Talking about coming back to life, what about that indestructible mosquito, or whatever the hell that bug thing was? It kept flying around everywhere, people were stomping on it, killing it. Yeah. And that was all to do with the uncle and auntie that I mentioned, who also turn up in the movie. First of all, when he's first on screen, the uncle, he just grabs a wasp out of thin air.
Yeah.
And later on, he's stomping on tarantulas. This guy was just here to wreck wildlife.
Yeah, he's not a friend of the planet. And also, I just want to interject with that woman who, the auntie, she was fit for, whatever age she might be. My goodness.
Aesthetics, what do you think she was doing?
I don't know, but her abs coming out of that little boho outfit were quite enviable, really.
Having mentioned all the heat being turned up in the house, and now the giant rat, I just want to mention some of the other supernatural phenomena that happens because of the house. And one of them was this indestructible mosquito burrowing its way into Todd's
that was
ear,
a good bit, actually.
Which really grossed you out. And then we also had, I don't know if you remember, oozing caramel and chocolate coming down the stairwell. That was one of the phenomena. That was another thing that the house tried to get people at the house was, look, I'm going to make this stairwell really sticky, really brown, and no doubt they'll be moving house.
I don't think it was supposed to be delicious caramel and chocolate, but yeah, it certainly looked like it, didn't it?
Todd's girlfriend, who his mother finds to be trouble, also gets her head caught on fire by a demonic fireplace, while Todd is in the kitchen making margaritas. Yeah,
that was another thing. I was like, I get he's in another room and he's got the margarita machine, blending up ice or whatever. But if your girlfriend is on fire in the other room screaming her head off, I think you'd hear it.
She was screaming pretty loudly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel Todd was a bit dumb.
Yeah.
Todd was slightly dim.
He was pretty, but not smart.
And so we've mentioned, or I mentioned anyway, the multiple sexual scenes in this movie. Now, I don't know if you caught this, but I believe it's in the first sex scene when Bill and Claire are in bed, and the dialogue mid-business was Bill saying, "Am I doing this right?" And then she replies, "I don't know." And then they carry on. I'm thinking to myself, well, they've had about 4 kids between them. How do they know if they're doing it right or not? How do they not know? So that was the first dialogue in the first sex scene. That didn't even
click with me, clearly.
Am I doing this right? I don't know. These people apparently haven't had sex before, so I don't know if the 3 kids are adopted. They could be adopted.
I don't know.
And then she starts just staring at her stepson's picture frame, a picture of him in the picture frame, while she's having sex with his dad. And then later on, what really shocked me, it wasn't so much the sex scenes, it was the one where she had a solo sex scene in the middle of the day up against like a banister or something like that, putting her hands down the front of her.
It was close to a window, but
trousers,
yeah, I know what you mean.
And then she imagines that Todd comes and gives her, no pun intended, a hand attending to herself. And then there was also little bits where after that she kept being haunted by Todd's basketball. She personally playing basketball, and then you just hear and she turns around and it's the
it's a symbol for him, which I mean,
horror
movies love using those things that they can roll in and bounce into shot, though, don't they?
It was just more that it was a haunting of sexual desire.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite disturbing, and for her, very upsetting, I'm sure, emotionally, to be lusting after her son.
Once again, as soon as I saw her come on screen, I knew he was going to see it. And you always think, having mentioned Amityville, It's About Time, you always think to yourself that one was so good that this one can't possibly live up to the brilliance of that movie. But in certain aspects, it absolutely blitzed it, and the sex scenes were one. I should also mention Jimmy with his arachnophobia, as I was getting into. So we've gone through what the house does, and then finally, Jimmy's dead dad emerges from out of the wall in various states of decomposition. By the way, I thought that the makeup effects were incredible on him. Really cool. So Jimmy's scared of spiders, but he shows his dead dad shows up and he runs to him in his arms. He's not scared of dead things. I mean, that was a bizarre scene. Just having he had no interest in his dead dad being dead. He was like, oh, dad's here. His face might be green and decomposed, but
it would have maybe helped if he'd been a bit more alive looking, at least the first time. I liked that he kept sort of decomposing. It added to the creepiness of everything, but yeah, that reaction was a bit odd.
How about the dialogue at the end? So they've all escaped the house, happy ending, and I can't remember which character it was, but someone just gives it the old, maybe next time we should rent. That's how to end. So it's safe to say, much like Amityville, It's About Time, Amityville Dollhouse, we think was absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, we think it was.
I'm glad we agree. And now we can go forth and discover some other Amityvilles. And I've even recorded the original, so we'll recheck that out and see if I enjoy it more this time.
Yeah, definitely.
On to the favourite, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Oh my goodness.
So you've seen the first one, obviously.
Yeah.
And you've seen a few reboots, whatever you want to call them. And as I said, there was a reason we just didn't go straight to number 2. It's just because, well, what did you make of it?
Even though in some ways it was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, in some ways I was so baffled. But when we were talking previously on, I don't know if it was, I know what you watched last week or one of the other clips we've got up, but you said to me then that Tobe Hooper had actually said that he'd intended the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be comedic.
Not so much intended it, but he just said that he feels like everyone glossed over what he considered to be an abundance of black humour.
Right.
So for this number 2, he decided just to concentrate on that pretty much.
Okay, well that's what I was about to get to, because I was going to say, when you said that for the first one, it blew my mind a little bit that he thought that was funny. But then,
yeah, I don't know anyone that thinks the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is
my
funny.
favourite comedy.
It's a laugh a minute.
But then with number 2, clearly he's had some kind of, offence taken to this lack of appreciation for his dark humour, because he lay on the comedic parts thickly in the second one. There's no getting away from it. This one is definitely intended to be humorous.
As well as thinking that everyone glossed over the obvious humour in the original, he also shot the original thinking that he was going to get a PG cut rating. Because
I love this guy.
Because he's like, there's no blood in it, and he's right, there isn't actually much gore, but you do see people being hung from hooks and stuff. And he was, at the end of this movie, I'm shooting for PG here. He is an absolute legend.
Brilliant. the more I hear about this guy, the more I like him. But I would say, a downside for the film, though, if I did have one, was that I did quite often think that some of the performances, they weren't completely sold for me.
I mean, I don't know if it's just
like the metal plate guy. I didn't buy everything that he was putting out there.
Well, that's Bill Moseley as Chop Top, who is considered a legendary character in horror history. Now, Bill Moseley, everyone who's into horror loves Bill Moseley. He's also in House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, all kinds of stuff. But this was his big, like, horror moment. This is breakthrough kind of thing in horror. And everyone just loves it. You've got to take it in context of what the movie ended up being and what he is in it. It's everything that makes it, if you want to call it special. And personally, I love what he does. So, as bizarro movie, as I mentioned it being, he's one of the most, if not probably the most bizarro thing in it.
But that's the thing. I think it's such a, and I've said this to you privately before, that what I consider to be really good acting and really good performance is when you can do something that's should be unbelievable, but you can completely sell it. And there were times where I felt like I could see the actor.
Don't you just feel like the whole movie is unbelievable on every level?
Yeah. So it's also unbelievable how annoying the girl is. It's like, just
all the screaming.
Get out and stop screaming. My God, like, get a hold of yourself.
Yes,
and
screaming got to me.
She could have that like tunnel she fell down into their like butchering room or whatever. It didn't look that hard to just climb up, considering all the routes that were there, and it wasn't that wide or anything. I was like, this is just pathetic, and you're just screaming and making everyone know where you are.
What about Dennis Hopper as the US Marshal, who goes on, he's just as crazy as the Sawyer family. And his dialogue is just so crazy.
It's so weird. And also he's a bit of an arsehole, really. I mean, he knows that she's in there as well, and he's like, oh, fuck it, I'm just gonna chop everything down anyway. Yeah.
Burn it all down!
Oh, and we can't move on without,
Well, that's not really moving on, because that's talking about Leatherface. Nice impression, by the way, there. No, talking about characters not selling things, possibly. For me, it was just the opening two toffs who are driving down the highway, and it's the toff especially with the sunglasses on.
Okay,
his performance was just, well, I guess his performance is like the entry into just what the whole movie, the introduction into what the whole movie is going to be, really, which is just out there, completely just devoid of any real sense, anything. And it's, like I say, the whole thing is goofy, and they even make Leatherface goofy, and I think your favourite part was possibly when he used his chainsaw as like a phallic symbol in front of his crotch and just started humping the air.
No, that wasn't my favourite part. My favourite part was what he did every time, where he just holds it and goes... It looked so stupid.
It was really funny.
It looked so dumb.
Yeah, they've really tamed Leatherface in this movie, because in the first one he's absolutely terrifying, and in this one he's just a complete goofball, and clearly there was a big thing about sexual repression in the movie.
Oh yeah. I mean, Leatherface is a virgin, obviously, and he's seen this, hot chick. Oh yeah, that was the other thing from the write-up. You were like, oh yeah, it's a detective and a radio DJ team up to bring down, and I was like,
and the family have now moved into the
some old theme park
chili service.
Oh yeah, they're selling chili.
Yeah, prime meat.
I thought that guy was great. He sold it 100%.
Drayton Sawyer, the character's name.
Yeah,
you absolutely believe him. But I just think that guy might have been just a bit off in real life, because his performance is so 110%
you believe it too well.
Convincing.
Yeah.
It's almost like he wasn't aware there was a camera there whatsoever.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. I have to look into this guy now. But also I liked that clearly, I'm assuming Toby Hooper thought that their granddad with the hammer in the first one was supposed to be massively hilarious, which I just found super disturbing when I watched it. But he brought that back.
You're weird.
He brought that back into this one, and again, he's like making a point.
He brought the whole dinner scene, dinner table scene back into it, just in their little amusement park dungeon. I really love the sets, by the way.
Yeah, it was.
And something else that makes the movie, again, just so weird, is that you can tell that Toby Hooper and the cinematographer have real skill, because there was like really gorgeous camera movement in parts. There was really beautiful lighting. There's all of this stuff, right? All this great technical stuff. But what was going on screen didn't suit the professionalism.
And of course the SFX
of what
were
was
amazing.
happening behind. Yeah, of course the effects were absolutely incredible. When the guy, the Stretch's assistant or producer, let's call him, I think his name was LJ something. He's got he just goes by 2 initials. Now he must have the hardest skull in the world. LG, that's it. LG must have the hardest skull known to
and he
mankind.
comes back to life.
Because he gets absolutely annihilated by Chop Top with a hammer.
Yeah.
And at that point you think, he's dead. But then he
gets skinned.
Then he gets skinned, and his face gets put onto Stretch, and then he wakes up with part of his torso skin gone as well.
His face, his torso.
Yeah, and then he finally succumbs after about. He must have had 40 blows to the head with that hammer.
He's the Terminator.
There we go again. 40 blows to the head with a hammer. Now it just doesn't. Nothing went. But in it. It's just not one of my favourite movies of all time. In fact, when I first saw it when I was young, after seeing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I absolutely despised the movie. I just didn't get any.
It's so different.
I didn't know what to expect on any level, and what I got, and it was from the opening. Again, when I saw those 2 toffs, even when I was young, I said to myself, "What the hell is this?"
Well.
You also get the dialogue, the voiceover at the beginning of the movie saying, "As far as the records show, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre never occurred."
He spoke so quickly.
So he's saying that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre never happened, and they couldn't find any evidence, right? So you're thinking that the Sawyer family are lying low. But then in the opening scenes, once Leatherface reveals himself to the 2 toffs driving down the road, he's standing on the back of a truck wearing his brother's skin, the hitchhiker from the original, and just wielding a chainsaw in the air down a highway. Now I'm thinking, how have they managed to evade any justice or not being found for this long if they're just out willy-nilly in the middle of the night buzzing a chainsaw around and
and also
2 blokes?
I didn't think of Leatherface as the type to take many day trips, just driving about, and he
wasn't driving. We don't know who was driving.
But he was in the car.
He was standing up in the back of the truck.
Yeah, he wasn't in their home, though, is what I'm saying.
Do you think Leatherface can drive?
I mean, I have no idea.
Michael Myers can drive. You know, when he escapes from the asylum at the beginning, gets into the car, just drives off.
Maybe he played some video games when he was really little before.
Well, no, this was pre-video games. So yeah, he's got nothing to go on.
Just a genius, clearly.
So the sequel came out in 86 or 87. So you're talking 12 or 13 years after the original. So they've wasted a whole bunch of time in between when they could have capitalized on making Texas Chainsaw Massacre a real franchise. And then this kind of just blew it because of just where it went, and it failed financially to a point. And then after that we start getting, I believe, straight to video releases, all varyingly bad/good. I enjoy them, but you can tell how they've completely messed up they've messed up being able to make this a true, like, Freddy or Michael, Jason, all those kind of guys. They didn't follow up on it, and apparently there was a script written and it was all ready to go. Toby Hooper had done it, but for whatever reason it got scrapped, and by the time this version got made, it wasn't Toby Hooper's movie anymore, and he was just going to be producer. And when the studio found out that he couldn't get the directors that they wanted at a decent price, Toby Hooper just decided to direct it. So it's almost like the whole thing's blasé. He's like, oh, bugger it, I'll direct it. And then he just got to do whatever the hell he wanted. And to a point, that's really cool. That's what you should be able to do. and you got to respect the Canon group for doing that, but they did it a bit too much, it looks like, because they've got some real stinkers on their resume, and one of them was actually helmed by Toby Hooper called Life Force, and it's one of the most, it's almost like The Room of its time. It's like The Room in space.
I've got to check this movie out by the sounds of it.
Toby Hooper rules.
Yeah.
He's just a maniacal filmmaker.
He sounds mental.
And I wish he was still around to make more. Let's get back to just quickly on Dennis Hopper. So you kind of got to wonder how he ended up in this movie. Now you would have seen him in Blue Velvet. He plays Frank, the absolute mentalist, in all these movies. And at the time of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, he said this was the worst movie that he's ever been in.
Burn.
And then just 6 years later, he also stars in the Super Mario Brothers movie, and then calls that the worst movie that he has ever been in. So I'm going to have to go and rewatch the Mario Brothers as well, because I saw that once when I was a child, and I thought, even as a child, I thought it really sucked.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, but for me it was fun.
You were a fussy child, but that's not a good sign.
I'm fussy now. It was fun to see Dennis Hopper run around the way he did, and saying the dialogue that he had to say. The one underwhelming thing was that the chainsaw sword fight with Leatherface
That was so silly.
wasn't as great as I thought it might have been.
There were so many times in that sword fight where they were wide open and the other guy was just standing there, just like waiting for him to put his defense back down. I mean, that could have been choreographed a lot better, unless that was Toby Hooper's point, like, they could totally have killed each other, but they haven't.
Seeing as you've not been, you've also thought that the later movies were kind of silly as well, which they are. What do you prefer? Do you think the more serious tone, which failed anyway because they're just not as good as the original, or just this nutcase version that Toby Hooper, the originator,
It really depends what
with?
mood I'm in. I think definitely the second one was, I like it, but it was a disappointment compared to the first one because it didn't scare me.
No.
Which I was hoping
Although
for.
you were caught out big time by the first jump scare
Yeah.
in the radio station when they first revealed Leatherface.
But it was more of a surprise jump than I'm actually scared jump.
Early on, you used to jump a lot at jump scares. They used to get you, and I haven't seen you gut in a while. And yesterday, that was a good one.
Yeah. And I was going to say, actually, the only part that made me feel really uncomfortable was that bit Bill Moseley, you said he was called, he's got the metal plate and he's like heating and scratching and eating the flesh. That was so disgusting.
That's what really stuck with me as a kid as well, was his metal plate and lighting his coat hanger and scratching away at it.
Yeah.
Really cool. I like his makeup. I like his whole get up.
Yeah. But yeah, it wasn't scary. None of them seemed that threatening, to be honest. Even though he literally smashes that guy's head in with a hammer so many times, there's still just none of them felt
You're right, it's certainly
terrifying.
Not scary. And the gore is just as over the top as the comedy and the whole thing in general. What I will say, it is probably still in my top 3 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, and it absolutely annihilates the Netflix Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is an absolute travesty. Shame on them. The director of this movie, a guy goes by the name of Steve White. His day job is actually a producer, but they got him to direct this installment of Amityville, having produced previous versions of it. And the budget of the movie was, well, I've read it's around $1 million, and it ran over, so he forfeited his director's fee. Now, how much of a producer mind is that? That he won't even take his own director's fee?
Clearly he was in the wrong part of the industry. He's an artist, not a money man.
Yeah. Well, no, but let's hang on, because I was also comparing the way that it looked to It's About Time, which I don't think we mentioned on the episode for that it was directed by Tony Randall, who did Hellraiser 2, and he did the story for Hellraiser 3, and I think he edited the first one possibly, so he's got a big history in the Hellraiser franchise. And I really, as has already been mentioned, I really enjoyed It's About Time, and a lot of that would have been down to Tony Randall. And in this one, Steve White, as a producer / director, he just gave every single shooting decision, blocking shot ideas to the cinematographer. So everything you see in terms of technical ability with the camera is all achieved by the cinematographer. And I think for some shots he did some really imaginative and cool things, to the point where at one where there's a tracking shot of Bill, I believe, and I said to you straight away, this is like one of our early scenes in Heathen that we imagine, where we're walking around a pawn shop and being spied on. So the cinematographer really did some great stuff, and also kudos to Steve White for saying,
I didn't do anything.
I'm producer, and you can get on with it, and I'll just babysit.
So he got his producer fee for it though?
Oh, I'm sure he got his producer. That's what I'm saying.
Got paid. Well, in that case, okay, fine, because if by the sounds of it, he didn't direct anyway, so you shouldn't really take it to director's fee then.
And it was also clear to me as well that they've taken, even though we skipped number 7, so we don't know what number 7's like, but they've taken number 6, It's About Time, and pretty much followed the exact same formula for Dollhouse. It just happens slightly differently, and again, all the lighting is quite similar, shots quite similar, but another reason that I enjoyed it.
Can I also just say before you cut, we've just come back to film this last little thing because you remembered you wanted to mention this, and you are now stood behind the camera in just a pair of trunks, very much like Todd, except not playing basketball and not oiled up, but there is plenty of man nipple out.
And it's had an effect on you, clearly.
It's distracting.
Well, it is, a balmy, 19 degrees today here in London.
That's...
Yeah.
Right, let's go and enjoy the sunshine.
You're lucky I'm wearing my trunks.